Hi, Olivia Herriford at the at MPIC's 2013 ICT Educators Conference, and I'm here with Elizabeth Wallner, who is an equity consultant with the Joint Special Population Advisory Committee. I just say JSPAC, but I had to spell that out. And anyway, Elizabeth has been participating in our diversity track from the very beginning. We started last year, and this year she's also presenting, well, presented twice. So wanted to ask you to, for those people that may not have been able to participate in your presentations, to tell us a little bit about JSPAC, a little bit of, you know, what did you call it? A Special Populations 101?
Yes, Special Pops 101.
And a quick overview about what JSPAC is about and your visions for diversity and inclusion of special populations in ICT.
Okay. The Joint Special Populations Advisory Committee is California's answer to non-traditional and special population leadership. It's funded through Perkins funding, which comes down from the federal government, and then California has the California State Plan, which is what authorizes JSPAC. And our goal is to support equity and inclusion in all the schools, but particularly in the K-12 and community colleges within the career and technical education programs. And ICT is one of those programs, of course. Our goal is to increase the number of women and minorities, as well as students with disabilities, single parents, displaced homemakers, foster children, and socioeconomically deprived or challenged students getting into school, staying in school, and then finding success on the job as well. So it's from, starts at 7th grade, Perkins funding, which is where we're funded. And so we start working with sort of the middle schools and the high schools, good old education, what's left of them, and then into the community colleges, and trying to really strengthen that pipeline so that particularly students that are going into careers that are non-traditional by gender, which frequently, particularly for women, pay more and have greater job security. Mm-hmm. But non-traditional for men as well in early childhood education or nursing, things like that. Because a more diverse workforce, whether it's ethnicity or gender or ability or anything, is a stronger workforce, and products are developed that are more robust. Teams are more robust. Longevity happens more. They have higher level of employability. There's lots of examples of, say, cars that were developed by teams that included more women, and that things like cup holders, which, you know, back in the day when we were kids, we had, remember those cups that had like sand in the bottom to keep them stable?
Yeah.
Well, when women hit the engineering world and into the cars, they put in cup holders because they thought, well, this is kind of silly. And so now there's cup holders and vans that have doors on both sides, as opposed to, remember those old-fashioned vans? You know, things like that, that women we just think differently than men do. So it is more diverse. So JSPAC goes out and we do workshops and we have a conference and we do research and we produce products that support educators at the K-12 community college and adult ed level in recruiting and retaining diverse students into their programs and helping them succeed. We do things such as produce posters that have diverse populations showing in non-traditional fields. We do research into the ways to retain students in programs. We educate about things like stereotype threat, which is the idea that a student who is part of a group that has a stereotype that is negative, they will their grades will suffer, mm-hmm. their success will be diminished simply because they're afraid of confirming the stereotype, and that fear actually does confirm the stereotype. So there's lots of different things like that that we do, and it's constantly evolving, and we're always looking for folks to participate in the committee, mm-hmm. To attend the conferences, and then we do workshops around the state, 20 of them a year.
You know, one of the things that I really big things I took away from your presentation that I said in this afternoon was I was listening to you posed some challenging questions to the educators when we were looking at, you know, the numbers of women, for example, that you know, were lost from you know, lack of retention. And a lot of when you ask the question of, well, why do you think this is happening, there was a lot of silence.
There's a lot of silence.
And I was really impressed with, well, I'll let you tell us, like, how can we get down to the bottom of the root causes of those kind of situations and occurrences, and how can JSPAC help faculty identify what those problems are?
Well, I think that the beginning of solving any of these problems is really looking at the data and really understanding what specifically the problem is. Because in the data that we looked at in the workshop, for instance, it was a series of 4 classes. It was non-traditional by gender for women, which meant that there were, in industry, there are significantly fewer women in the industry. And yet in the class, at the beginning session, there were 33% of the class was female.
Right, right.
And by the end, it was only 8.7% female. So, but when you look at it overall, if you look at that data in the aggregate, I think it's 20% was female, which is fine. You know, that's great. If you have 20% in your ICT course or in construction, or men in your early childhood education, you're going to be, that's fine, we're good. But when you break it down, it's in the last classes. So you have to really understand where the problem is, where that break, they call it the pipeline, the STEM pipeline, and where the break in that pipeline is. And so the break was, in that particular set of data, was really between the 3rd and the 4th class. That was the most dramatic drop. They lost 75% of their students between the 3rd and the 4th class. And so they would have to then, they understand that, okay, here it is. Now they're going to go and they're going to do research into what the literature says, the reasons of women are not going into these fields. And there's a plethora of different resources. They're going to do possibly do some research, direct research, by calling the 75% of the students that dropped out and saying, why is it that you dropped out? What could we have done to keep you in the class? Is it that the scheduling is different? Is it that there's no childcare? Is it a situation of a bus route not, you know, there not being access to transportation? I mean, there's 100,000 reasons. It could be that the classroom has a different teacher, and that teacher is not welcoming, and it's what's called a chilly climate, which is Bernice Sandler's research called the chilly climate. And it could be just that there's a chilly climate, and that type of, those changes can be made even with a teacher that isn't really 100% welcoming to students, by making the students aware that, hey, you're going to run up against this either in the 4th class, which is where the break is, or on the job, because you're always going to come up against hostility in life if you're part of a underrepresented group. Right.
And I thought that was one of the great things. It sounds like there were quite a few resources at the JSPAC site that will help answer some of those questions.
Yeah.
Correct.
Our website is jspac.org, and under the resource page there's several hundred different either links to different different websites, or research reports, or posters, or what have you. And then also there's some other really great resources like NAEP, which is the National Alliance for Partnerships and Equity, who they specifically work with students that are non-traditional by gender. But a lot of those can be applied to women of color, or students with disabilities. It's one of the actual workshops that I did attend was about the hearing impaired. Yes. And her resources were, and I thought, we've said this 1,000 times, but it bears repeating. What you do to serve one population serves all of the population, right. And I thought that was a really important, really great resource. Yes. She was great.
Good. Well, thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
And continue to be a part of our diversity track.
I'm impressed, actually, that the first time, this is actually the 3rd year I presented. I think the first year there were maybe 6 people. Last year there were maybe 10. And this year we had 2 sessions and probably 35 people combined. So that's exciting.
I'm pretty excited
that equity
about it
is
too.
Becoming part of MPICT.
Picked.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's exciting.
Good.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.